Okay, so today what I'm going to do is run through this full A-level paper from June 2020. It's going to cover a range of A-level and AES content because it's the full A-level, so they can ask you any question from any part of the syllabus for macro. And yeah, I'm going to explain the reasoning for each thing like I usually do, and explain why some of the other answers are wrong. And as you can see here, you are usually advised to spend 30 minutes on this section. Now, most people actually end up spending less time on this section, which is fine. But make sure that if you're going through that you are, if you're trying to speed through, that you're checking your answers at least towards the end of the exam, because you don't want to lose any of these crucial marks that you could get before you start section B and section C, which typically are longer style questions and more difficult to answer. So yeah, I'm going to see how quickly I can get this done, but I'm not going to rush, and I'm going to explain everything as I go through as well. So here we go to start off with. UK real gross domestic product annual percentage change 2014-2017. Okay, total real UK GDP in 2016 was 200,000 million. Okay, that's fine. And it says, with reference to the chart above, calculate the total real UK GDP for 2017. You are advised to show your working. So what I want to do is, I know that in 2016, and I'm not really bothered about that figure there, that the value of GDP was 200,000 million. And what they're saying is that it increases by 1.7%. So what I need to do is take my 200,000 million and times that by 1.017. That's the equivalent of being 1%. So if I do that, it will give me 203,400. Remember to put in the units, and there we go. That's done. We know that this is the 1.7% increase, and so we just increase it from there, and that should be it. Explain the term real gross domestic product. Okay, so anytime you see the term real, that just means accounting or adjusted for inflation. So real gross domestic product is the total value goods and services produced in an economy over a given time period, and then time period adjusted for inflation. Done. With reference to the chart on page 2, which one of the following is correct over the period shown? Okay, GDP per capita. Well, we don't know. We don't know. GDP per capita is GDP divided by population. So it can't be that. Inflation rose in 2015. Again, we can't know that because there's no inflation data. The UK economy grew at its fastest rate in 2014. Yeah, that looks like it's the correct one because you can see it's 2.9%. And then every other year is falling. In the UK, we don't know that. We can't see that. So for me, the answer's got to be C. The planned investment in the redevelopment of Dover Port will cost £115 million. The chief executive said it will lead to many new job opportunities for local people and a transformed waterfront experience with new cafes, bars, and shops. If the value of the multiplier was 1.8, which one of the following will be the total increase in GDP from the redevelopment, assuming other things are equal? Okay, so there are two ways to calculate the multiplier. You can do 1 over 1 minus MPC, or you can have 1 over MPW. Now in this case, they're giving us the value of the multiplier, so it's quite simple. What you do is you take your 115 million and you times it by the value of the multiplier, which is 1.8. So 115 times by 1.8 is equal to 207. 207 million. And that's it. Using the example above, explain how the multiplier process leads to an increase in aggregate demand. Okay, so multiplier is the final change in the value GDP beyond the initial injection, just or above the initial injection. So in the case above there, the initial injection is 115 million, but the total impact as caused by the multiplier is 207 million. So there is a 92 million, no, hold on, 85. Yeah, 92 million pound increase in the value of GDP as a result from the multiplier. So that's the one bit. And then we could say we need to make sure that we have some kind of application. So we could say the individuals who work in the bars / cafes may spend their income receive. Then we can say therefore there is an increase in government spending for the initial injection. Consumption for the subsequent injection. Subsequent effect on GDP, obviously. Okay, there we go. And we could put like some kind of throwaway comment like one person's income, one person's spending is another's income, which is basically what the multiplier is describing. The example loves that kind of phrase. Okay, in 2018, the IMF lent Argentina $57 billion as part of a bailout package to help prevent the country's government defaulting on its debts. This financial crisis also caused significant capital flight out of Argentina's economy. That means that investors are selling assets and taking money out of Argentina. Explain the role of the IMF in providing financial assistance to countries such as Argentina. Okay, well, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, will provide loans which commercial institutions will not. Won't, due to the risk of their default. So, yeah, IMF provided $57 billion. Always need some application, just quoting what they've given you already. Okay, and then we could say maybe like in the long run, this will build confidence in the Argentinian government and allow them to borrow from the private sector again, maybe. That is, if commercial institutions are not like, no way, we're not lending you any money because you keep almost defaulting on all the loans that we give to you, and it's not worth the risk. Okay, which one of the following is most likely to happen to Argentina's currency value as a result of capital flight, assuming it is operating with a floating exchange rate system? Okay, so this bit here is crucial. Floating exchange rate system. It means that the exchange rate is determined by market forces, basically by people who speculate on the currency. Okay, what will happen is if you've got, let's say, I don't know, let's say the peso to the dollar, the American dollar, and you've got demand for peso, the peso? I'm not sure. And then you've got supply of peso, whatever the currency is. This is the initial equilibrium. So we say it's that price, that quantity, and here's the quantity of pesos. What happens is there's likely to be a dual impact on the value of the currency. So demand is definitely going to decrease because no one's going to want to buy that currency, especially if they think that people are selling it. You know, the economy is looking like it's in a very precarious situation. So the demand should actually shift in like that, because foreign investors aren't buying it anymore. Also, the supply, now this is the interesting thing, or the bit that you need to make sure that you're paying attention to. The supply pesos on foreign market exchanges is going to increase, as in people are selling them, which means that there are more available in financial markets for you to buy if you wanted to. So as a dual impact, right, when we go down here and then we go across here and we end up at this new equilibrium point of D2S2, and the price going down here really represents that the value has depreciated. The value of the currency depreciated, not appreciated, which increased value. And these two systems here are for fixed exchange rate systems. So that these are immediately wrong. Okay, number of unemployed persons UK as measured by the claimant count, thousands. Fine. Claimant count is the number of people. It's one way of measuring unemployment. It's the number of people claiming job seekers allowance. Job seekers allowance is a type of unemployment benefit in the UK. Now it's all rolled into unemployment, universal credit, but it's one thing that you need to know about. It's the definition that they asked for. Okay, calculate the percentage change. So see that new minus old over old times 100 between April and July 2018. Okay, so April there and July there. So our new value is 910. Our old value is 894. Divide that by 894 times by 100. That should give us, so 910 minus 894 is equal to 16. So 16 divided by 894 equals 0.017 times by 100. So I'm going to do it to 2 decimal places, so 1.79%. And if I look at that, that looks about right. You always want to double check your percentages just to think, is this appropriate based on what the values are giving me? Because if you came out with 50%, you would know that that's wrong because 910 is not 50% bigger than 894, or 17% doesn't look correct. 1% of 910 would be about 9.1, and it's gone up by 16 there. So 1.79% is getting close to 2%, which is what is approximately the value there. Okay, so the question now, explain one likely reason for the increased number of people unemployed in the UK over the time period shown. Okay, maybe it's the number of people who are using e-commerce rather than going to stores to buy things. So let's say one key reason is the number of people, number of households buying products online. This will reduce the demand for labor in high street shops. Meaning there is less need for labor. Labor and unemployment rises. Which one of the following types of unemployment, is most likely to be caused by technological change in industry? Okay, so cyclical is a no. And the reason why is this is changes in the business cycle, the trade cycle, changes in the trade cycle. Real wage is caused by wage rates being higher than market equilibrium. Basically, there's being a surplus of labor. Seasonal is things like lifeguards in summer. So no, no, no. Structural, it's a combination of either geographical inability of labor, which is when you won't travel to work or you're not willing to leave the community, or equivalent is occupational. And that's when you don't, occupational inability of labor, that's when you don't have the skills to get the job. Technological change in industry is going to mean that you don't necessarily have the skills. So the most appropriate one is structural, because it's occupational inability of labor. You don't have the skills to take on that role. Okay, the Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau Bridge is the world's longest sea bridge. It reduces the journey time from Hong Kong to Zhuhai from 4 hours to just 30 minutes. Wow. It cost the equivalent $18.8 billion and was government funded. Draw an aggregate demand and aggregate supply diagram to show the likely impact of this new bridge on the price level and real up in the region. So there is a couple of things that you can do. So firstly, I'm going to put in the labels to my diagrams. So I have those there. I'm going to show you what it looks like if you decide to draw a diagram to impact that. This is an example of a supply side policy. So this is the government spending on infrastructure is an example of an interventionist supply side policy. They're directly intervening to build infrastructure to make it easier to move from one place to the other. They're also reducing geographical inability of labor, which we spoke about earlier here, because now people can actually travel between those two cities in order to get to work in the equivalent areas. Now, if I'm doing that, so I could actually draw an outward shift in AD because we know that it's going out. This expenditure is going to go on to some kind of like good that the government are paying for. And that would be correct. And I would get the marks for doing that. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to draw LRAS shifting outwards because I just mentioned that it's a supply side policy. So we've got an increase in the productive potential of the economy. And then I could just draw like so, Y2, and I'd show that I'm getting economic growth. And at the same time, there's also being an equivalent fall in the price level. And that would get me all 4 marks. But I could do either one. I could go for the AD curve shifting outwards, but I'm not going to do that. I've decided to go down the other route instead. And then finally, which one of the following would be most likely to solve a negative output gap in a problem in a domestic economy? A negative output gap is when you're not operating at full employment output. So a negative output gap, here's full employment output, here, YFE. Let's say that, I'm just going to put in my labels like that. Let's say the economy is operating here, What I'm saying is that if the value of real GDP is less than full employment output like it is there, then this is my negative output gap. So when I'm looking to solve this is some kind of demand side policy. So government funding to the World Bank does not do anything for that. Government spending on foreign aid is, again, nothing to that. It's not buying a good or a service. Government spending on public transport, an increase in it, is a supply side policy, but also contributes to government spending as a component of AD, causing a fall in the size of the output gap. You can just see there, just from the dotted lines there, the second one I drew is close to the YFE. Increase in income tax is actually going to cause AD to go the other way because it's going to increase, could increase savings, but it could decrease consumption. So AD would shift the other way. And there you go. I think that was around 20 minutes, which means that moving on to here, I've got an hour on this, but I can add on 10 minutes, which is going to help me in terms of completing the rest of the paper on time. Hopefully this is useful. Share it with people if they need it. And yeah, thanks very much. I hope this was useful for you, and have a good rest of your day and revising for exams if you've got those coming up. Cheers.